Hello everybody and welcome to Air Tycoon Online 3 once again. Now, I normally don't do 2 episodes per day, but today I thought would be a good day for 2 episodes because I have a lot of stuff I need to do tomorrow, and the way I deal with that is by procrastinating today, because today is the last day, which is not tomorrow, where I have to do a whole bunch of stuff. So with that in mind, as you can see, I'm ordering more 747s with these minimized seats because they are making a lot of money. I did make kind of a mistake when setting up my routes, and that is my 747s are flying at a range breakpoint, which is really bad for them. And what I mean by that is, um, they're if the route was any shorter, they would get 6 schedules, but it's only a little few kilometers, maybe 500 to 1,000 kilometers too far, most of my routes, to get 6 schedules a week, so they get 5 schedules per week. And because of that, they're not making as much money as I expected. If we sort by aircraft here and scroll down to the 747s, so we can see how much they're making. As you can see, the good ones are making around 8.5K, and the bad ones are only making around 7K, which is really a really poor score for a 747. A good score should be, even though these are leased aircraft, right, should be around 9K at least, 9.5K. But as you can see, most of them are only making around 7.5K to 8K, which is just a little bit less than what you'd expect. Um, if we keep scrolling down, there's a few routes which are at really good range breakpoints, and you'll see how insanely much money those routes make. For example, this route here is making 9K almost. There's a couple more which are making a lot because they're at good range breakpoints. Let's see if I can find them. Um, yeah, not many. There's the one to Shenzhen. That one is making a ton of money because it's just getting 6 schedules per week, and you'll be able to see how much more money they're making. So here's the one to Shenzhen. As you can see, it's making almost 10K. Now it's really rare to get a 747 which can make 10K a month. But it is possible. And this one is a pretty good example, where it's just about possible. But expect around 7.5K. It's more realistic for at least 747. And yeah, as you can see, really, really good amounts of profit, especially compared to these DCA11s, which are kind of struggling at this point. So what I'm going to do is, because I haven't made a route for a long time, I'm going to say if the load factor is less than, say, 92%, we're going to change the price, and we're going to do this for each class individually to make sure we don't kind of mess up any unrelated classes to 125%. So 125% pricing lets lower satisfaction routes reach 100% load factor. Now, given that the profit margins are pretty low, this significantly affects the margin, just like a 5% difference in price. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. Now, with that out of the way, all we really have left to do is start opening a bunch of new routes, and I've been requesting slots, a decent amount of them. Now, I haven't been too rigorous, so I haven't been too thorough with requesting slots everywhere, but there's a good number of cities where I'm now kind of what's it called? No, I'm not waiting on slots anymore, and I'm just trying to open the routes. So there's a good amount of cities like that now. And yeah, let's just try and make sure we're starting to cover most of the cities in all areas. Like, no matter size, we're kind of disregarding the size of the city we're opening routes to when we're using DC8s, because simply they will all be full. And given that the World Traveler Index of this particular world is looking quite good, I get the impression that we're going to have tons and tons of routes available to us with moderately good sized aircraft. Of course, you always want to use the largest aircraft, which will still be full for each route. Um, but also, of course, this is not always possible. Um, Sometimes there's just a route which is too big or too small, and or there's just a route. What am I trying to say? Guys, I have no idea what I'm trying to say. Take back what I was trying to say. I have no idea what I was trying to say. Um, yeah, I think what I was trying to say. Okay, you know what? I have no idea. I'm tired. Anyways, yeah. This is what happens when I record at like 10 p.m. after a pretty long day. Um, yeah. Anyways, what was I trying to do? Yeah, I was just trying to open stopover routes. Damn. I'll stick to what I'm good at and keep making routes. Uh, but yeah, we're gonna run out of stopping options soon. Like, there's a good number of routes down here for New York to make stopover routes to. None of these are good 747 breakpoints for ranges, which is a little bit unfortunate. So we're not getting the big advantage of using the 747 in a lot of these routes. But hey, we're still making decent routes. which are going to make good money for what's it called? These DC8s and 707s. Um, yeah, I mean, that's all the New York slots. So we've got to work with some of these London slots now. As you can see, the London coverage is starting to get quite high. So there's not too many routes to London left. I'm going to continue to ruthlessly overlap my competitor here because, of course, he's not a well run airline. Low satisfaction, low service levels. It's an easy target for me. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just overlap routes as if he's not there. And if you have a low satisfaction, low name value, um, competitor, do as I'm doing now and simply open up routes in that compete with all his routes because he will lose more money than you guaranteed. Does not matter if you're charging full price and he's charging 1.05 price, you're still going to make more money than him. You might have the same load factor, but of course, since you're charging more per seat, you will be making more money. So yeah. Always don't be shy. Don't worry about competing so much with bad players. Now, one thing I kind of want to mention is I'm flying 747s here, of course, but I'm also based in London, which is one of the biggest cities, which means almost any like decently sized route I connect to London, um, say Chihuahua. I'm not sure if this is a 747. As you can see, it's 100% load factor or almost 100% of the time. So as you can see, it slightly dips off 100 sometimes, like right here, but it's just barely. And you know what I mean? Like the profit margin is still insanely high. And the reason I can do that is because um, I'm based in London, which is a huge city with huge demand. If you're based in a smaller city, you want to look for slightly bigger routes. For example, Monterrey. Okay, these cities are hard to say for me, all right? I'm bad at pronouncing. But as you can see, the city is about 50, 60 points of business tour higher. That makes a big difference. Even better, you might want to get to a city the size of Cincinnati, which is almost 100 points bigger than a city like Chihuahua. Um, that will help a lot in terms of your bottom line. Um, when your cities are smaller. And of course, there's the main cities, the huge ones, which everybody knows about and has heard about, even if you don't really play this game a lot. And those routes are, of course, great, especially if they're monopolies, but you rarely get them as monopolies. Um, in the case you do, always take them, of course. There's almost no downside, besides the fact that competition could move in. But as long as you're running high satisfaction planes, it will never be an enormous problem for you. You'll always be able to make profit off the route, even if there's a little bit of competition on it. Case in point, London to Chicago, a huge route to a huge city to a huge city. Um, Take a look at this route. My 747 is almost at 100% load factor. As you can see, it's not making that much money because it's part of a pretty long stop. But um, since the other stop is making another 3 to 4K, it's not a bad 747. And as you can see, like there's a guy flying three 747s on one route for some reason. I could not tell you why. Why would you want to do this? I have no idea. Um, but like it's making good amount of money. 6K per 747 is not bad at all. But given the prices he's charging on the fact that he's flying direct, I can only assume that the reason why that route is doing good is not really because um, the route is so great in itself, but it's just because he's flying three owned 747s on one route. Of course, it's gonna make some money, especially with the ridiculous size of the route. But I mean, he should probably take one of those planes off and find new routes for it, and he'd be making a lot more money. I'm glad they're adding more cities in Japan. Nikita is definitely a new city, which wasn't there before, which is really nice because now we have more stopover options, and I will never complain at more stopover options. You already know. Um, the more destinations, the more demand, the funner. If you ask me, it means you can start to ignore smaller and smaller cities and use bigger and bigger cities, which is, of course, the more fun way to play the game. Now, I'm starting to run out of cities on this side of London to stop over to. Um, yeah, as you can see, there's not a lot left down here. There's a ton of cities with no airports, but there's a few cities here in Southeast Asia. There's a couple cities here, but I mean, yeah, we'll work with all of them. Um, every single one will eventually have a route to it. So like at least the ones with an airport, I just gotta get around to requesting the slots. Yeah. I think I'll be back in a bit once I can get some of these slots requested. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to show you guys during the waiting is my hella nice profit. As you can see, we're peaking 200,000 now, and that's a jump of nearly double before the 747 acquisition. As you can see, more than double actually, which is really, really nice. So we should start climbing up the leaderboard quite quickly now. Um, yeah, I mean, well, we've joined an alliance successfully, which is really nice. And now it's just a march probably to second place. I doubt I can pass this first place guy. He is really kind of running away with what's it called, with the size of the airline, at least. And where is he based? Chicago. I expected as much, and London actually. So giving me some competition here in London, but I haven't really noticed yet because there's just so much demand out of London that it's going to take a while before the demand is like split up among us enough for me to really notice um, the detriment of having to compete with him. Yeah, if we take a look at my London routes right now, I mean, look at the load factors. I mean, these are like, I think this is an uptake 0.10. Um, but as you can see, everything is just pinned at 100%. There's a couple 90s, but these are the low satisfaction aircraft. And I think, what are these? Are these new routes? Or yeah, these are new routes, so they haven't quite hit their stride yet. But a little bit of a lower price should help that out. Keep the load factors pinned at 100 because in this game you almost universally make the most money from a route when the load factor is 100. Um, it doesn't matter so much um, what the pricing is to make it 100, but if you can't hit 100% load factor, select a price which will make the route 100% load factor. That's nearly always a good thing in this game, just because of the way kind of the math for how much money you're going to be making is done. And that's I'm not sure if I like that very much, but it's a decent mechanic, so we'll work with it. Anyways, I'll be back with more slots. Alright, guys, we are back. We have bought slots all over Asia, anywhere where I could find an airport where I did not already have slots, and there were not a lot, let's be honest. And they're all really terrible routes too, but we're going to use them anyway, um, because we need to make every stopover we can. So we're going to take any stopover we can get. Now, there's still tons of cities in the US where I haven't quite gotten around to buying slots there, but we should eventually get around to them. Um, yeah, there's just a lot and a lot of slots in the US. Um, yeah, as you can see, we cannot find a 3 schedule per week to that area. So what we're going to do is we're going to stretch this out to the maximum. So kind of milk the fact we're only getting 3 schedules per week. Um, and yeah, I got to go fast because I got to set my prices correctly too. And I'll got to do that before the end of this turn. Um, which of course, as you can see, is in just a few minutes. I also have tons of unused 747s right now, so I kind of got to use those too. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff to do. I think we should prioritize using the 747s actually, um, because those are going to be the money makers. So yeah, if we see any good non-747 routes, let's sort by aircraft, so we can do it this way. We can go ahead and throw 747s on them. Let's see. Tampa to London's decent, might as well. Um, yeah, as you can see, we're kind of starting to run a little bit low on good 747 routes. Not completely, but there's not so many good ones anymore. A bunch of 747s. Let's skip over that. Now we're 320Bs. Okay. Uh, Changsha to London. That's a pretty good one. Let's go ahead. 747. That one. The competitor's not very good either, so don't have to worry about that. Calcutta to London, that's another good one. Yeah, I'm kind of ignoring the fact if they're Monopoly or not because the competitor is not very good. Um, yeah, I'll take a look at him and you can see his name value and satisfaction are terrible. So my 747 will demolish him when he, of course, was trying to make money from the route. Mine's just going to make more. Um, so we can go ahead and use the larger and better 747. Um, I think the city's fine too. So we can go ahead and upgrade that to a 747. And yeah, as you can see, this is fantastic. We're using so few aircraft, but we're using 747s and such to take really large routes. And I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, like this, we kind of minimize the number of aircraft we need. Um, and it makes everything much easier to play. Um, if I had to take all these routes with short range aircraft, it would indeed take forever. Um, and that's not really something I want to do too much. I'd rather spend slightly less time and use these larger aircraft and just capture more of the demand much easier, and I'm a big fan of that. So once again, we're gonna keep on making routes. Uh, yeah, the kind of routes I'm making now are kind of the straggling last kind of routes. Any other routes other than this are starting to get too small to make even to London. So as you can see, the cities now I'm making have around um, just 200 combined business and tour. That's about my lower limit to the size of a route I'm willing to make to London. For these kind of routes, usually if you have a regular size 20%, of the cabin dedicated to business class, it actually won't even be full. Um, so that's something to be aware of. Um, if you really like, and specifically order planes to open routes of the size I'm making now, avoid business class seats. Shrink the business class partition down to as small as 14%. Um, or even less for the best results. Now, of course, I'm not really bothering to do this. I'm just making my routes with the old aircraft, and it's not really worth a cabin renovation since these routes aren't exactly supposed to be the cash cows of the company, but more or less placeholders. And we got to set the prices now. There's 2 minutes left. Um, so what we can do is say based on default fare, set the prices to 1.3. This is the easiest to do when you make the routes, but you can also set it later on because most of your other routes will be at 100% load factor, but there will sometimes be a little bit of mix up and sometimes you really don't want that mix up. And yeah, as you can see, there's just plenty of good routes to New York as well. So we can go ahead and start taking those. I know there's like infinite competition between New York and Los Angeles. So I'm going to try and avoid that particular route. But I mean, I have no other biases. I'm just going to keep on opening routes, competition or not. Just because competition just doesn't seem to be very good in this world. Not a lot of players are focusing on satisfaction, and that is going to play into anybody's hands who is focusing on satisfaction because you can go ahead and overlap any of their routes and make more money of them than them. Um, but obviously, if you have bigger and better monopoly routes, just ignore the routes they have, um, and everything is going to be fine anyway. But just in the case that you're running out of routes to make, you need some routes, just go ahead and open competition routes. Uh, as you can see, I'm opening a lot of competition routes right now, and the reason being, it's not even because um, I don't have other routes to make. I just like to do things systematically, so I'm going from close to far, kind of. So I'm working my way from cities which are close in Europe to New York, and then I'm eventually gonna work towards cities which are farther in Europe, which is why I'm also using the stopover points, which are kind of farthest from New York right now, and I'm gonna work my way closer as I can go farther in Europe. Yeah, as you can see, I'm not being too thorough. Like, there's obvious missing and very good big routes available, but I'm not being too thorough. I'm just kind of going through fast and like seeing what I can make right away. And if it's not good, I kind of ignore it. And if it's great, I'll make it right away without too much thought. And then let's see if I can get a price reset in before the tick turns over. It's going to be close. It's going to be close. All right, perfect. Now we can go ahead and wait for the turn to pass. One thing I'm going to want to do too, if I have the opportunity to, is buy more, what's it called, New York um, counters and stuff just in case they start overflowing. I don't think I'll need them, but it's always good to be cautious. And also start some more slot requests for cities in North America because as you can see, there's just tons which I still haven't done. Um, yeah. Ooh, new alliances are being made. Very nice. Good to see the world is somewhat active at least. You can usually tell what players are human because most human players will look to join an alliance. Um, although some human players just stick to themselves too, which is perfectly fine way to play. But of course, I don't think bots will ever join alliances. I don't know. I really don't know what percentage of this game is played by bots because it was kind of brought to my attention, and it kind of seems true that there's a lot of players who play in a similar way, and I'm assuming those are the bots, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm spitballing here. These could all be human players, and I just have no idea. Um, but I could really never guess. I really couldn't. Anyways, with that in mind, if we take a look now, 139 aircraft, so I'm kind of shooting up in aircraft quite quickly now. Um, and of course, a good amount of them are leased 747s, which are just the most profitable aircraft you can get. My profit, despite making so many brand new routes last tick, is still um, it's still on the upswing, which is really nice. And of course, I want to make sure every single one of my first class seats is set at the correct price. Kind of forgot to do this last turn, which will cost me a few K, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. So yeah, I just need to wait for more slots in my main airports now. Um, yeah, seems like a forever kind of wait for more and more slots in these my main airports. There's a lot of slots to go, but yeah, let's see if there's any cities we're missing also in North America. Every time it seems like you're trying to open a route, all the missing cities are super obvious, and then when you're like what's good going to look for the airports which you want to get slots in, you can't find them. Anyways, uh, I'll be right back in a second, just after I order, see how many 747s I can order. So, one, okay, that's not worth it. I like to do a lot of things at once, so I don't like to do like 5 aircraft at once. It's kind of annoying. I like to do like 20, 30 aircraft at once. Kind of saves time that way. So we can go ahead and just put in a little order of 707, so we can do these last 9 all together, and yeah. Um, I'll probably do them off camera. You kind of get the idea. New York and London are going to be our friends. As you can see, once you have two hubs, it starts to form this really awesome triangle pattern, which I like to look at before. Eventually, of course, the globe will just become basically completely white. Somebody told me to turn off competitors' airlines. Maybe it's not clear in the video, but it looks pretty clear to me what are my routes because they're so much brighter and in bold, but maybe it's hard to see in the video. So here it is. This is what my route network looks like by myself. Come and overlap it if you really want. Um, yeah, give me a challenge or something. I please don't, but if you really want to, I won't mind too much. Um, yeah, pretty interesting. New York, London, eventually LAX, and what do I call LAX, and Shanghai, and those will be my 4 main hubs for now. Um, and depending on what you guys want, you guys should take some pics in the comments right now. What hub cities do you want? And I'll try and focus on other cities which aren't those ones you pick. I want another hub in Asia, another hub in Europe, and another hub in North America. So I want like at least 3 hubs in Europe, North America, and Asia eventually. Um, so in terms of Asia, I know Simon Air wanted Guangzhou, I believe. Like I could take anything from Singapore, Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, Hong Kong, or Kuala Lumpur would be the kind of hubs I'd be looking for in Asia. In Europe, it's really just Frankfurt, Frankfurt, and maybe Madrid, which haven't already been taken by fellow ally members, and even maybe Moscow. Uh, but we'll see. We'll see on what's available. And for North America, I'll probably make my last hub Toronto. Um, Toronto, sleeper OP city. Look at the business in tour. 800. It's actually the 4th biggest city in North America, I believe. So here's Los Angeles and New York, which is Los Angeles is usually the first biggest, then closely followed by New York. In real life, New York would actually be by far the biggest, but there's like 3 airports in New York: LaGuardia, Newark, and JFK, which all generally serve the New York area. Um, they kind of compete with each other. But Toronto, just by itself, is just slightly smaller than Chicago, which is kind of insane, which is really, really nice. And it's bigger than Atlanta. It's bigger than. I don't know why they made Atlanta so small. Atlanta in real life, I know it gets most of its traffic from stopover or from being Delta's kind of hub, but that's no reason to make it so small in this game. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. It's been pretty long and rambly, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.